with describing your establishment here and your principles. And Jacob Roberts. Hi.
Hi. Well, we're here at Equilibrium. We call Equilibrium a positive lifestyle environment. What we've done, in essence, is brought together a combination of the healing arts and the creative arts in one venue. And the way we've done that is we've created sort of a multi-dimensional or multifaceted venue. So on one hand, we have a vegetarian cafe, gluten-free, soy-free, dairy-free. The vast majority of our produce comes from the Windham County Farm to Food Network, so we're sourcing from mostly local farms. When we need to get avocados or something that's out of season, we go to our local co-op. And beyond that, we have a healing arts sanctuary, which is a small room that's set aside for practitioners of body work or energy work, so they can see clients. We have walk-in sessions every day from 12 till 2. So we have massage therapists, we have acupuncturists, we have Reiki masters, we have holistic health coaches. We have a gentleman that comes in once a week who's a Peruvian shamanistic healer. He does readings and energy work with people using ancient Peruvian methods. And so that's sort of a method for, and on that side of the spectrum of things, for people who are learning about or are in the practice of health and wellness, nutrition, food as medicine, to come together, convene, have a place to do their business, and also to network and be with one another rather than in these independent offices. They can come to a convening space here at Equilibrium. So on the creative arts side, we have a crafters marketplace, which features some international fair trade, but mostly local and regional crafters, designers, artisans, people who you might see at the farmers market, some people you may see at a high-end art gallery here in Vermont, or weekend warriors, people who are amateurs or students. So we have a very eclectic collection of art and design in our crafters marketplace. And then in this room here, we have a contemporary white wall gallery. We turn over the work every month in accordance with the First Friday Gallery Walk. And so that's a visual art showcase. But we also have live music here. We have poetry nights. We have open mic music. We do a film series that we're doing once a week now. We have yoga classes, dance and movement. And we also have educational workshops. And, it's sort of a potpourri. But in many ways, a lot of people come in and they have a sense in the space that there's a lot here to offer in terms of where their varied and distinct differences, or where their interests lie, and not seeing them as different entities, but as parts of the whole. So in many ways, I think when folks step in here the first time, they feel like, okay, this feels like me. This feels like everything that I'm into all in one place.
Are you seeing the interest in this place growing? You've been here 4 months, I think?
Yeah, 5 months. We started in September. Yeah, absolutely. One of the things is that my partner Jessica and I were very new to this community when we started this project. So I think just by nature of having the doors open now 5 days a week, a lot more people, there's word of mouth, people come in the first time, they come back with friends or family. Being that we're not just a store that has regular hours or a cafe with regular hours, but we also have programs and events that bring people in specifically for those types of destination evenings, for live music or something like that. That's just another way people are kind of stumbling into the space saying, oh wow, I didn't know that you also had a crafters marketplace or a cafe or the Healing Arts Sanctuary. So some people may pick up on one aspect of what we're doing, and that was what draws them in. But then again, they learn about sort of the fuller spectrum of what's here. And I think the place is really being embraced by people here in Brattleboro. And we're off Main Street. We're not in the sort of the core of downtown. So I think we still have a learning curve with people who are visiting for a short period of time, tourists, window shoppers, people leaf peeping or going skiing or something like that, because we're not on the main strip. So I think locals are getting to know where we are and what we offer, but now the education is on those that are just stopping into town.
So it would appear that you're on a leading edge of a sort of a new model, integrating business and also healing and community together. What path did you take to come to this vision?
Wow. In many ways, so there's two of us involved, more and more people getting involved. So I can only speak for myself. This has been, this type of project is something I've been involved in since I was a child. In my very early years, it was just the act of convening, bringing people together, whether it would be to play a game or to have a party or to just be in each other's presence. I've, as an only child and somebody who grew up in an inner city and friends and extended family was very important to me. I've always been, in my professional career, bringing people together. And that, in many ways, sort of dovetailed with my professional work as an artist. I got a BFA from Syracuse University, and immediately after graduation, I opened my first art gallery, which led to establishing a 501c3 organization that really focused on the health of that community by acting as a catalyst for artistic and cultural evolution that resulted in positive social change. And we worked on that for 10 years, and there was, using the arts as a vehicle, a lot of really beautiful things that happened in that community, in a very economically depressed community at the time. That then led me to doing some work in Ithaca, New York, around sort of building a model of what a future eco-city would look like, and we focused on transportation, land use, and energy, and sort of how, when you look at holistically those three major components of how a city functions, there's some new and ancient methods that we can bring back to sort of get us out of some of the troubled times that we find ourselves in our built environment.
I was particularly intrigued by your account of what you did with the green space, and would you share that, because I thought
Sure.
it was specifically wonderful.
Yeah, that was fun. One of the projects I worked on in Ithaca was called Connect Ithaca, and that was a citizens group that we brought together to talk about a whole litany of things in terms of improving our community. And amongst the variety of conversations that we had, we naturally split off into subgroups and subcommittees to focus on different areas. And one was really about building community on the already pre-established urban block. So we really encouraged private property owners, renters, and our sort of collective in the neighborhood to see what would happen if we started planting those tree belts with edible crops. So we put beans in, we put watermelons in, we put cherry tomatoes in, and there was actually some that really got ambitious and put corn in. And sure enough, 2 seasons later, we had a really robust urban garden being developed in plots where people could actually come and harvest for free, and people that were more ambitious about tending the plot and harvesting the plot would often leave wicker baskets of some of the bounty from that harvest to the side with a free sign for those that were sort of just in the periphery and maybe needing some of that produce. So it was a really wonderful project.
That the way that you're accessing the natural abundance in a place where we've been so impressed with scarcity is truly a healing place to go, and we want to expand that. So another thing that you told me about was the experience you had in Belize, and I felt that it dovetailed with sort of the vision that we're building around creating community, creating food independence, creating a better connection with the amazing abundance that can come from a single seed, so we can combat that scarcity mentality. And what you described to me was something I hope to share with more people, which is why I'm here with a canvas. So, would you walk through what it was like to live there and describe what type of community you found?
Yes. Last winter, Jessica and I had an opportunity to live in the San Ignacio area of Belize, which is his former British Honduras, just south of the Mexican Yucatan and bordering Guatemala. And this is a nation that has been independent for a relatively short period of time. It was, there was an imperial colony, and for many generations of people growing up there, there I think was this really strong sense of an ancient culture and maintaining a history and a knowledge and a wisdom that was there for eons, and then at the same time pressures to conform and pressures to modernize. So you have these sort of two ends of the spectrum present when you go to a place like Belize, where you go to the major cities, where you get high rises and you get the sort of advanced civilization, and then in a not so far off proximity, you have people living like they have for thousands of years. So we actually lived in an area that was not very developed. We lived in a very small community. We lived on an ecotourism resort. Jessica was working with an ancient or traditional Mayan healer, and so she was going off with him and really gave her access, and when I would go with them occasionally, gave her access to the community because he was well revered and knew everybody. And it was sort of like walking around with a rock star or something. You've got this Mayan healer and everybody knows him. So in very short time, we were embraced by the community we were living in. I think partially because of the work that we were doing and the fact that we didn't stay isolated at the resort, but we made it a point to be out and playing with the children and supporting the local economy when we were going shopping, going to get some food, or even doing some recreation or something like that. So by and large, our as people who really obviously didn't look like we were from there, were very well received, and it just seemed like in general community was very important to people, and embracing in a very warm fashion people who are coming there for a short period of time, visiting tourists or workers, were treated as warmly as kin.
It sounds like that there's, despite you're talking about a poverty level that we haven't been aspiring to, you're also talking about a community sense that we would aspire to.
Oh yeah. I mean, when you look at the conditions, and I think coming from a place like North America, you would say, oh geez, these poor folks. But yes, I mean, they're living in very simple means, but the energy, the emotion, the compassion, the love that was shared and that we felt a part of there was never any sense that these people are living without, or that they're living in scarcity. And to your question about some of the unique things that we saw in terms of how the community operates, this might be one of the reasons why. First and foremost, most homes have their own garden. They have their own chickens. They're self-sustainable on a sort of a food security side of things. They're not dependent on having to earn money and go to market to eat. On the sort of housing side of things, it would seem that the code and the sort of the hoops that we have to jump through here to be able to build yourself a home, to use your own ingenuity, to work with the materials that you have and the resources that you have, is the way of life there. So, people are constantly building and rebuilding and adding on to and enhancing their living situation just over time with the means and the resources that they have and the family that they have around to contribute. So it just seems like there's a lot of sense of independence and autonomy in terms of how they can manage their livelihood from a food, clothes, and shelter standpoint. And then in terms of commerce, it's really interesting where a lot of the independent households will have a specialty that they'll cultivate and then they'll offer. So somebody will have really good eggs and they'll have lots of chickens, more than they need for their own family, and they'll sell eggs off their front porch. Somebody else will have school supplies, pencils and papers and erasers, and they'll have like right in their living room, just like a little storefront, you know, where the kids from the neighborhood can come and re-up on their school supplies. Somebody else might just have a little cafe, a little to-go space. Another person might have clothing, tapestries, fabrics. So in a way, when you go out into the community for a walk, you can just take your shopping bag with you and you can go and support all of these independent families and get the things that you need. And yeah, there is a weekly market in San Ignacio, and a lot of people do go once a week into town, and there are a lot of farmers there with their produce and their wares, and there's also sort of a bazaar, a marketplace where you can get pots and pans and other things that we would normally go to like a big store or a big box to get. It's in an open air marketplace, so they have that too. So if you can't find what you need in your super local community, you have the weekly market you can go to for those additional resources that you may need. But again, it's like when you're at the little masa mill and you're buying your masa for your corn tortillas, and you ask, you know, the folks that are there, oh, you know, we wanted to get some beans, or you know, something that, oh, you want to go to Felix's house? He's got really good beans. I think they just harvested and they're drying. You know, Felix has good beans. You know, and also there's an awareness and an acknowledgement of where those resources lie, and they support one another. Whereas here, I think a lot of times we get into the mode of commerce. It's very dog eat dog. It's very like, you know, taking care of one's own and not really being open to sharing the wealth in that way.
Have you thought and about big picture policy evolvement that will help the kind of predicaments we're in with climate change? Like today should have been a blizzard, but we had like a fall storm. Have you put energy into thinking for the big picture, and would you like to share it?
Mm-hmm. Wow. So,
I mean, as a business person, that's, you know,
yes.
you're navigating successfully, where and bringing a hybrid of new forms of healing.
Yeah.
Like you're not fighting what is. You're just presenting.
Right. A new model.
A new model.
Right.
So
well, and I think, and I guess I hesitate when you say sort of the larger, big picture, sort of legislative acts, you know.
Or how do we empower ourselves within such constricting red tape? Yeah,
I've contemplated it to the degree of not understanding most of why our system is designed the way it's been designed, and quite frankly, without knowing exactly which acts of Congress or, you know, which events over time got us to where we are, my sense is that, you know, the driver of our economic reality is not sort of the everyday person that is going about their daily lives. There's an agenda that's being drafted from a much greater source and an interest that I believe is much more consolidated. And in saying that, I think that one of the only ways that we can sort of take back the power to the everyday person is really start living into a whole new paradigm without worrying so much about where some of those constrictions or legalities exist, because we realize that the model that's been established by those forces is coming to an end. It's crumbling before our eyes, and it's taking a lot down with it. So I think we just have to look in the mirror, and we have to look at ourselves and say, okay, what can we do right here and now with the resources and the energy and the people that we have within reach? You know, so I think that when you look at the resiliency of a small town or a neighborhood in a bigger town, or a district in a large city, that we really have to make it about a super local economy, about sustainability at a very manageable level. And if we can have, a sustainable neighborhood next to a sustainable neighborhood next to a sustainable neighborhood, I think that's a much doable model than if we try to go and sit and have discussions around sustainability at a state or a national or a global scale, because all of a sudden I can just see all the gears coming to a grinding halt because of, we can never do that because, we can never do that because, but we can do things at a small scale. And if everybody can adopt that mantra, then all of a sudden you look around and you say, wow, everybody's doing something at a small scale. Now it's a big scale, So what do we do here, for example? We set up a model that's very analogous to a farmer's market, for example. So we don't have a lot of resources and we don't have deep pockets to open a small business. And that's one of the things I think keep people from investing and opening up their little dream shop or mom and pop or whatever it is, because the odds are stacked against you, as it is with us as well. I mean, we're still trying to make it work. But we realized that if we took a shared risk, shared reward mentality, and we got people on board where if everybody put a little bit in, and we didn't have to take on the full brunt of their financial responsibilities, that we would create a stronger base for success. So that being said, we sublease most of our space to artisans and artists, and time and space for performers and people doing educational workshops that are on what we feel a very affordable scale for them. And if they have a sale, or if they have students attend their class or what have you, we get a small administrative fee, only if they make money. So in many ways, again, it's a way for people to plug in and get their products and services into this storefront, and take a go at it in terms of reaching their marketplace and with our assistance. And if there isn't any sales, if there aren't any revenues coming in, it's not hurting them in the pocketbook in terms of their commitments to us. But on the other side, if it is successful, if their items are flying off the shelf, or a lot of people are attending their classes and workshops or their performance, then we all share in that reward and having it be a success. We also do karma trade here, which is an opportunity for people to work with us, and we pay them in exchange, or we give them discounts on use of the space if they're a vendor, they're doing business with us in that sense. So there's volunteerism that's involved, where people, there's a ground floor where you might not have money, but if you have some time and energy, we can kind of put you to work here and be a part of our family and part of the community. And then another thing is that, we as a small business are doing our best to reach out the olive branch to our other small businesses in the downtown area, and trying to get to know who they are, what they do, and where some sort of common bonds lie, and where we can give referrals if people come into our shop and say, hey, I'm looking for this in town, do you know where I can get that? Or do you have a recommendation for a good place to fill in the blank? We know, oh yeah, you should, because we're new to the community and we're learning ourselves. But rather than just being so focused on what we're doing in our four walls, we want to make sure that we're an asset to the community and supporting the other people that are doing business and living here.
You have quite a long hours and open a lot, and you've been open for 5 months. So what I want to address is do you have enough emotional support from doing this? Is it fulfilling for you, or is it depleting your battery pack, so to speak? Are you finding how are you finding that?
Depends which day.
It depends on the day. Yeah. I mean, because it's a very public thing to do.
Yes.
To be available.
Yes.
The amount of hours that you are, and be the sort of peaceful person available. There's a lot of challenges.
Well, thank you for acknowledging that. We essentially work a double shift every day, 5 days a week. The 2 days that we have off, we come and do work as well. So it's, there's not a lot of downtime but we know we have to say to ourselves that we chose to take on this work, and we know that this is not about commerce. This is about providing a venue, providing a channel, a vehicle for transformative action. And we're not a 501c3 not-for-profit organization. We're not a members-based cooperative. We're just a small partnership, 2 people running this space. However, you ask about sort of the the support, the emotional support, the energetic, the spiritual support, and even the monetary support in terms of, we have to pay our bills too. We can't just like make some paintings and give them to the landlord and say, hey, look, we made some art this month, So in that sense, in this, we treated the first 6 months as like a pilot, a beta test. And we treated this in a way to say, like, we're going to we're going to float this model and see what the reaction is. And if after 6 months it's really a struggle and people aren't coming through the doors for whatever reason, we were kind of flying blind when we started this in this community. We didn't do any market research. We didn't, it was just sort of like we had a hunch. We felt right about doing this here. And since we've opened the doors, even before then, when we were in here just chopping wood and painting walls, people were coming in saying, what are you doing? We're getting a buzz. You're doing something cool here. So a lot of people, when they come in, they speak about the energy. They don't, it's not about the products and goods per se. It's not like, oh, look at these cool things that you have here. It's about, oh, thanks for providing this space. Thanks for holding this space. Thank you for bringing such a positive light and energy into actually a neighborhood that a lot of people had a lot of fear around being in, even though it's right off of Main Street. There were some activities here over the years, I guess, that had a lot of people frightened around being on this block. And so since we've opened our doors, a lot of folks have come in and said, this is the type of stuff we need in Brattleboro. We need more of it. Or even reflecting on an era of the past where there was more things like this. I suppose that people say, oh, the good old days, so there's like there's a little bit of a nostalgia when people come in here, and I believe that's sort of like harkening back to the days where a lot of people were coming and moving to Vermont, a lot of artists, a lot of young people, back to the landers, people doing little eco villages and cooperative endeavors, and maybe over time that's been lost a little bit, and it seems like for many reasons that's the mantra again. Let's really begin to look at ways in which we can build community. And I truly feel that the community is the economy. It's not 2 separate things. Economic development and community development are not 2 separate things. They're the same thing. So it seems like the feedback that we get, by and large, is really positive. We know we're living in an economic recession, so we don't have people coming here dropping thousands of dollars on original artwork. But we have enough people coming to dine with us, enough people coming to programs and workshops, enough people buying some goods for gifts or for themselves, that there's just enough activity that we can pay the bills. We're not getting paid yet, but that we'll get there at some point. And again, that's not the focus of what we're doing. So we think that this model could evolve into a not-for-profit organization. It could evolve into a membership-based cooperative or something else, a B corporation or something like that. We're here as like sort of midwives, and we're trying to birth this into the world, and what life it takes on once it starts getting up and getting its feet under it. We're open to finding out what that is.
Jacob, thank you very much.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure. Thank you.